Hi, Vivian Wallace.
Hi, Bruce Kanze.
Okay, we're meeting on Friday, May 1st, 2020. We're meeting on Zoom because we are meeting in the middle of a pandemic. Um, and so we can meet from our homes. Um, you were one of the founding teachers of Central Park East Elementary School. And so I'd like you to talk about how the workshop center helped you to be the teacher that you are and how it shaped your life.
Yeah, it did. It did shape my life. In 1968, there was a huge strike in New York City. The community control against the union, basically. And that's when I started. There was a program called, oh my God, I've forgotten what it was called, but it paid students to work in classrooms and do what they had to do. And I was assigned, we didn't need any certification.
Mm-hmm.
We just needed a bachelor's degree. And I had that, and I decided to try teaching and see what it would do for me. My mother was a teacher, so it was not totally foreign. And I signed up for this program, and then I realized I had no idea what I was talking about. I was assigned to a school in District 6, and I had no idea what I was talking about. So I went to my alma mater, City College, and I found the workshop center, and I found Lillian Weber, Deborah Meyer, Inez Wilson, Miriam Dorn, Vivian Windley, Stan Chu, Jim Newyar, and I took courses because I didn't know what I was doing with the kids in the classroom.
Now, you started with 1968 and the teacher strike.
Right.
But when was this, when you started taking your classes at City College and at the workshop center?
Yes.
What year?
68.
In 68?
Apprentice, it was called, the program was called Apprentice Teachers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And those were people like me with bachelor's degrees in something else who wanted to try to teach. Anyway, I went to the best place possible. By chance. I mean, I graduated from City College, so that was why I went back there. And I think one of the things about Central Park East was that we were all constantly studying. We were studying how kids were doing, how kids were learning, what kids were doing. The ETS people helped us initially. Ted Chittenden, Marianne Amarell, and Ann Busses developed a reading study entitled something like How Kids Come to Reading.
Mm-hmm. Just say what ETS is for the
Educational Testing Service. But it was the early childhood group in Educational Testing Service that didn't believe in standardized testing.
Right.
That's a piece we need to remember. And the fact that we were constantly studying reading or science or social relations was incredibly important. Mm-hmm. I think it made us, first of all, it was interesting, but it made us feel as if we were on the same page in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I looked this afternoon, but it's on the top shelf and I didn't feel like climbing up, for Lillian's blue books. Do you remember those, Bruce? it was really an incredible place to work because we were constantly learning. And Debbie made sure of that.
And Deborah Meyer, one of the founding teachers of Central Park East, who
Right.
went on to become the director of Central Park East.
So it was Deborah Meyer in the beginning, Deborah Meyer, Inez Wilson, Mike Trazoff,
Mhm.
Howie Boudin, Lucy Matos, and me.
Mhm.
And I don't know how I got there. They chose me,
Mhm.
and I'm thrilled that I did, but I really don't know how I got there. In those days, the standardized tests were given to teachers a few days before the tests were administered.
Mhm.
And so I had it. I had a classroom of second graders, none of whom had been in the United States more than 6 months, none of whom spoke fluent English. And my Spanish was equally lousy. I eventually hired a mother to teach me. So anyway, a few days before this test was administered, I was standing in front of the class and saying, and I remember this one thing particularly, this is what a platform is. That was on the second grade test as a vocabulary word. And as I was saying that, Inez Wilson came in to give me an interview. I said, oh man, I've just flubbed this. I mean, that's it. Nobody's gonna hire me. I'm cheating. That's exactly what I was doing. You can choose to include that or not. I'm not terrifically embarrassed by it. I'm almost only a little embarrassed by it.
But it speaks to how we recognize children's needs and try to help them through some of the obstacles that are put in their way that aren't really warranted.
Yeah.
But what school was that in? Because Central Park East, just let me
That
say.
was in a school in District 6. I'm not going to name it.
Okay, in District 6. And you were teaching a straight second grade class, because when you went to Central Park East, the grades were mixed.
Right.
Right from the beginning.
Which was a wonderful idea.
Mhm.
In fact, at the beginning, we had like 3 grades at a time. And then we went down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
We had, at the very beginning, we had an early childhood group, like kindergarten, first, second, and an older group.
Mm-hmm.
And Howie and I were teaching the younger group. Debbie and Mike were teaching the older group. And Lucy was floating.
Mm-hmm. So connect this to the experiences you had, please, in the workshop center, because I'm still interested in hearing how the workshop center, as I understand it, was in flux in 1968. It was just in its formative years. Lillian had just come back from England and had been working in the infant schools, the informal education program, and brought a lot of those ideas back to New York City. Started working, I know, in PS 75, PS 84, I believe.
Yeah.
She also worked in, and I know Deborah Meyer talked about working in PS 144 up on 122nd Street.
Well, I don't remember that, but I'm sure Debbie's right. She also came to our school once, or twice, or 3 times, and gave us feedback. I mean, it was just an amazing thing that we had so much support.
Mm-hmm. When you say she came to our school, that's Lillian went to Central Park East and worked with in the formative years of Central Park East.
Yeah, the first year or 2 even. Mm-hmm. And as did, well, Inez was there, she was teaching there. Mm-hmm. None of the others actually did, not Miriam Dorn, not Vivian Windley, not Stan Chu or Jim New York, but they were available to us to talk. Mm-hmm. And at the workshop center.
did you travel up to the workshop center during the course of the year when you were teaching?
Oh, 3 times a week at least.
Okay, so I didn't do that. I wasn't the first one to do that, where I would leave school and then run up to the workshop center and try things out.
Right. And we tried things out, and we did.
And you tried things out. And the
Well,
workshop
well, the workshop center presented us with things to try out.
hmm
Try this science piece, said Jim Newyar or Stan Chu. Try this reading piece, said Deborah Meyer. And we did.
Physically, the workshop center, I know at one point was in Shepherd Hall, and then in
In the basement.
In the basement, right? And I spent a very hot summer there when the temperature in New York went up to 112 degrees, and we had the
Right.
blackout in 1977. Remember that well. But when you worked with the workshop center and with Lillian Weber, was that already in Shepherd Hall, or had it not gotten there yet?
It was in Shepherd Hall in the basement.
Okay.
I mean, that's my memory. I may be wrong.
hmm
My memory ain't so hot anymore.
And you worked with other teachers from other schools when you went to the workshop center?
Well, that was a wonderful piece of it. Yes, we did. Or I did. We worked with all the people in whose schools Lillian was working, which meant New York schools. It was only later when we worked with ETS that we worked with teachers in Baltimore and Philadelphia, and I don't remember where else.
And is your memory that there were also parents involved early on?
Yes. In the structuring of our school, parents were involved. And I mean by that, they would raise issues and either we would agree or we wouldn't agree. And some of us did and some of us didn't. But yes, we were working with parents. And they were more or less supportive. Some things they didn't like at all. And some things some parents didn't like at all.
I spoke with Deborah, and she mentioned some of these things about the struggle to have a democratic school. But having a democratic school doesn't mean you give up responsibility, for instance, as educators, to make decisions about what happens in your classroom.
Right.
Okay, so other memories about the workshop center and what you learned there.
Oh, God. Well, I learned to be confident.
You learned that well.
Yeah, because I knew what I was talking about, because they made sure that I knew what I was talking about.
How?
How did they do that? I'm not sure. Why don't you try this, Vivian? Okay. What did you think? Well, it worked or it didn't work. Okay, how could you make it work better? I mean, it was a constant dialogue, Bruce.
And it was a modeling of how teaching happens.
Yeah.
And you brought that in.
And how kids are thinking.
And how kids are thinking, right. So they were paying attention to how you made sense of the things that you were doing.
Right.
And also, I guess, how you were going to use the things that you were learning in your classroom.
Yeah. And in the beginning, my classroom was kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. Which was tough in a way. I mean, I had to learn how 5-year-olds thought and how 7-year-olds thought. And that, partly I can credit that with Pat Carini, who was also brought to our school by Debbie and Ted. Yes, they were all connected. Now, how Ted connected us to Pat Carini, I don't know. But he did, and pretty early in our evolution. So that we went summers we went and studied with her, and met there in Bennington, met Philadelphia people and Baltimore people, and I forgot the third group. Pam and Alice came in our third year, and Leslie came in our fourth year, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Debbie might remember that.
Okay. And Pam and Alice and Leslie, were they all connected in some way initially to the workshop center or no?
No, they were connected through Ann Cook's. She had some kind of center for teachers.
Yeah, on 96th Street.
Yeah. But
So are there any other memories you have of the workshop center, times you spent there?
it was just uplifting, Bruce. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Mhm.
We would all of the teachers who were there were taken seriously and provided with things to learn.
When you say provided with things to learn, do you
So
mean
we played at
you
the
played?
workshop.
Okay, but now what made that so compelling? Was it the fact that it was physical and you could really work with materials and things like that in the presence of people who were more familiar with those materials?
Sorry, this is
Okay.
ridiculous.
So I'm asking,
Yes, then again, please.
what was so compelling about working at the workshop center? Was it the physical space? Was it the camaraderie? Was it the assurance of people? One of the things that Deborah Meyer said was, and you'll laugh, I think, about this, is that she was awed by Lillian Weber. Lillian knew how to do everything in the classroom. She knew how to set up plants. She knew how to set up animals. She knew. And while I was listening to Deb talk about that, I said to her, a lot of times when we say someone knows everything, we don't say it as a compliment. Did you mean it? And she said, no, I meant it absolutely as a
Oh,
compliment.
absolutely. She set us up in every way. There was support, there were materials to play with that we could use in the classroom. She was terrific. She was also sometimes a pain in the ass.
I'm not going to edit that.
Good.
Well, I think, I remember Lillian yelling at me, the point is, and using
Exactly.
the finger to emphasize everything. And I remember thinking she wasn't hearing me. And when I took a step back and thought about it, I realized not only was she hearing me, but she was 4 steps ahead of me.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I really would. I mean, all of the setups and the support, which, I mean, I know I've said this like 3 times already this afternoon, but it was incredibly important. It worked.
Mm-hmm. It worked.
It worked.
So the question that I have is, did the way the workshop center was set up, how did that affect you in the way you set up your classroom, managed your classroom?
Well, I saw where things might go. I saw where a sand table might go. I saw where blocks might go. I saw where clay might go because I was playing with it myself.
Mm.
And so I could look at the kids.
You could look at the kids
doing all those things
and
that I had done.
You knew you had to have those things in your room.
Yes.
I remember Lillian saying that if teachers are going to work with hands-on materials, they need to have experience working with those materials themselves.
Absolutely.
They have to explore. They have to come up against the problems that happen, the setbacks, the obstacles that kids will have when they play with these and work with these materials also.
Right. And that was essential.
And that was essential. And then there's the issue of how do children develop language by using these materials, by working in these different areas, and then how do we support the growth of that language?
You know, one of the things that teachers who came to our school to visit always said is, these kids are so articulate.
Mm.
Well, I mean, we forced them to talk about what they were doing, to describe what happens to the clay, to whatever it is, to describe how the blocks worked. And so, of course, they were articulate.
Mm. But it sounds so, to me, so much that that's what Lillian did with the teachers who she worked with at the workshop center.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Whew.
I mean, she made us talk about it too.
She made us talk about it, and she even made us keep journals.
Right.
I wish I knew where my journal was. Well, I'm going to stop here. I think you're going to have lots of thoughts. So we're going to pick this up at another time, if that's okay with you.
Okay, Bruce.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much. And say hi to David. Okay.
I will do that.
Okay. Bye-bye.